Today, let us journey back to medieval Rome and listen to the moving story of St. Frances of Rome, a woman whose life was filled with love, sorrow, miracles, and the quiet companionship of heaven. Frances was born in Rome in the year 1384 into a noble and wealthy family. From the time she was a little girl, Frances had a deep love for God. While other children dreamed of celebrations and fine clothing, Frances dreamed of prayer and service. At just 11 years old, she felt a strong desire to enter a convent and dedicate her life entirely to God. But in those days, daughters of noble families often had little choice in their future. When she was only 12, her parents arranged for her to marry a Roman nobleman named Lorenzo Ponziani. At first, Frances was deeply saddened. She had longed for the quiet life of a nun. Yet slowly, she came to understand something profound. Sometimes God calls us to holiness, not in the silence of a monastery, but in the ordinary duties of family life. And so Frances embraced her new life with remarkable love. She became a devoted wife and a tender mother. Together, Frances and Lorenzo had 3 children. But sorrow soon entered their home. 2 of her children died while still very young. The loss of a child is a grief that words can hardly express, and Frances carried this sorrow quietly in her heart. Yet she did not allow her grief to harden her heart or turn her away from God. Instead, her suffering seemed to deepen her compassion for others. Having known such loss herself, she could comfort those who were grieving, the sick, and the poor with a tenderness that came from her own wounds. Only one son survived into adulthood, and even he was once taken hostage during the violent political conflicts that troubled Rome at the time. Before the soldiers took him away, Frances made the sign of the cross over her son and prayed for God's protection. She believed that even if she could not protect her son, God could. Those who witnessed it was astonished at her deep trust in God. Her son was eventually returned to her safely. In those years of fear and uncertainty, Frances clung even more firmly to her faith. The streets of Rome were filled with poverty, disease, and wounded soldiers. Frances could not ignore the suffering around her. She opened the doors of her home to the poor, the hungry, and the sick. Many times she gave away so much food that the household servants worried there would be nothing left for the family. But Frances continued to give, and something extraordinary happened. More than once, when the family storerooms appeared completely empty, they were later discovered to be filled again. God had quietly provided. What she gave to the poor never seemed to run out. God also blessed Frances with a gift of healing. Many sick people were brought to her, and through her prayers they experienced comfort and, at times, miraculous recovery. During outbreaks of disease and plague, Frances and her companions cared for the sick when many others were too afraid to come near. Yet perhaps the most extraordinary gift God gave Frances was the companionship of heaven itself. From about the age of 30, she was blessed with the visible presence of her guardian angel. Frances described the angel as a radiant young figure who walked beside her wherever she went. This heavenly companion guided her steps, warned her of dangers, and strengthened her whenever her burdens became too heavy. At times, people around her even noticed a mysterious light shining near her as she walked through the streets of Rome. For Frances, this angel was a constant reminder that even in the darkest moments of life, heaven was never far away. As the years passed, other women in Rome were inspired by her example. They wished to live lives of prayer and charity while still remaining in their homes and families. So, in 1433, Frances founded a spiritual community known as the Oblates of Mary, connected with the Benedictine tradition. These women dedicated themselves to prayer, service to the poor, and caring for the sick, especially during times of plague. Frances continued her life of charity and prayer for many years. After her husband died, she finally entered the community she had founded. The girl who once dreamed of becoming a nun had finally come home to that calling. When St. Frances of Rome died in 1440, the people of Rome already considered her a living saint. Crowds gathered to honor the noblewoman who had chosen humility, the mother who had endured great sorrow with faith, and the servant who had spent her life caring for the suffering. Today she remains one of the beloved saints of Rome. In past centuries, people prayed to her during epidemics that threatened the body, plagues that brought sickness and death to entire cities. But perhaps our own time faces a different kind of epidemic. Not an illness of the body, but illnesses of the soul. An epidemic of forgetting God in the busyness of life. An epidemic of indifference to those who suffer around us. An epidemic of hearts that grow distracted, tired, or distant from prayer. Like the sick people who once came to Francis seeking healing, perhaps we too need healing in our hearts. Healing from pride, healing from selfishness, healing from the quiet habit of living as though God were far away. And perhaps we are also called to be healers for others, to bring comfort, care, and attention to the suffering around us. Holiness is not only found inside monasteries or churches. It can grow in kitchens, in families, in streets filled with suffering, and in the quiet acts of love we offer every day. So today, let us pause and reflect. If St. Francis of Rome could remain faithful to God through sorrow, loss, and the chaos of the world around her, what might God be inviting us to do with the ordinary moments of our own lives? And in the quiet of our hearts, what are we called to be healed of, and what suffering are we called to help cure in the lives of others? Now, let us turn to the Rosary, lifting our hearts to Mary, Mother of God, who always leads us closer to her Son. Just as St. Francis of Rome entrusted her life, her sorrows, and her acts of love to God, we too bring our intentions, our needs, and the needs of the world to Mary's gentle care.
Rosary of the Blessed Virgin Mary. The Joyful Mysteries.
Take a moment and pray for your own intentions now.